All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's American Ambulance Association webinar, presented in partnership with Logis Solutions and MedStar Mobile Healthcare. Before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that you can ask a question at any point during today's webinar by using that Q&A button on your menu. We're going to go ahead and hold all the questions and address them at the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. We will also be sending out a recording of today's event and the PowerPoint slides in an email later today to everyone who registered. Feel free to share that recording and PowerPoint slides with those within your organization that were not on today's live presentation. I wanted to start off by thanking Logis Solutions for being a great partner to the AAA for several years. Logis has been kind enough to sponsor our annual conference, including this year's virtual conference, for several years. Without the support of our valued partners, we would not be able to continue providing this type of education to the EMS community. For 2 decades, Logis has used cutting-edge technology to advance CAD, incorporating intelligent decision support to allow organizations to improve dispatch, operations, and the bottom line, and ultimately their patient care. With customers throughout the world, Logis has been a true friend to the AAA and to the EMS profession as they have focused on automation, integration, and innovative solutions. I'm now going to turn it over to Gil Glass, who has served as the Chief Executive Officer for Logis for the last 6 years. Gil's passion for technology to help communities is informed by over 30 years of experience in the ambulance industry. His experience includes positions as field practitioner, comm center manager, chief operating officer, and general manager. Thank you so much, Gil. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Megan. Logis is proud to be a partner with AAA to present this important webinar, and we want to acknowledge that this has been a crazy year and appreciate all you and your staff have done to try to keep our community safe while your first responders are put in harm's way. Technology and EMS are passions of mine, but I realize it can be also intimidating, and Logis is here to help you get past that and take full advantage of what technology offers. I'm pleased to introduce you to a colleague and friend of mine, Matt Zavotsky, who will introduce his team. Matt is an experienced and highly respected industry leader who is also the immediate past president of the NAEMT, serves as the Chief Strategic Integration Officer at MedStar in Fort Worth, who's a Logis customer for the past 4 years. Matt and all of the MedStar team have been deeply involved in moving the profession forward, and we're proud that they've chosen Logis to be a partner with them. Matt?
Thanks, Gil, and it's really an honor to be here with you guys, but more importantly, it's an honor to be here with some of the folks that really make these things happen. I just want to double check, Gil, is the audio working?
Yes.
Okay, cool, because that would be really embarrassing if we can't really far into this, if people are like, hello. Any high-performance, high-value EMS system needs to leverage technology to make the environment safer for our team members. A couple of them you're going to hear from this afternoon or the morning, depending on your time zone, but also for our patients and the community. Public utility model systems like MedStar and other members of the Academy of International Mobile Healthcare Integration and the American Ambulance Association are some of the most widely researched and most efficient and effective EMS systems in the country. These systems extensively use multiple cutting-edge technologies to services to help improve patient outcomes, as well as operational and financial performance. Things like ProQA EMD, First Watch, First Pass, thank you, Todd Stout and your team, operated by Q, Lytix DriveCam, Tableau, video laryngoscopy. Other examples of technology are the tools that MedStar and other systems use to make informed decisions and evaluate changes to processes. So let's talk tech with the people who this impacts the most. With us, we have Raylan Bryant. Raylan is a long-term MedStar employee. In fact, I'm going to embarrass him. We often do this in public settings. I believe, Raylan, you started here as an explorer, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I was 13 years old.
Yeah, so he's been with MedStar for about 72 years. But he served in multiple roles in the field and now for many years in the communications center as one of our premier system status controllers. But he's going to talk to you about that term here in just a minute. But also a member of our home squad and just a really strong MedStar team member and advocate for the system and for the patients. We also have Elizabeth Roden. Elizabeth is a long-term paramedic here, but some of you may know her in the AAA. She was also our Star of Life in 2017. And again, huge patient advocate. You may have also seen her most recently on the national news. She was interviewed She's turning even brighter now. She was interviewed by NBC News talking about the impacts of the coronavirus on EMS workers, and she did an amazing job with that. In fact, there are some rather embarrassing photos that you may see in this presentation of her doing that interview. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Matt.
For being here. We also have Ken Simpson. Ken Simpson is our interim CEO, has been our chief operations officer for 3-4 months now. No, actually 2017 he came here, Ken. Yep. And hit the ground running and has done an amazing job here, making the system run even more efficiently. So let's dive right in. What we're going to do is we're going to make this very conversational. There's going to be very little information up on the screen other than some of those embarrassing pictures that we talked about earlier. But we're going to have some conversations about some key questions, and we're going to have the people that do this every day answer those questions. So the first question is, how has technology changed the way each of you have performed your job over the last couple of years? So we'll do ladies first. So Elizabeth, this is your question. Tell us about that.
So our Logis system that we have now, I think it's improved my job in the field dramatically. We have real-time navigation that routes us turn by turn. So we have less to worry about up front and can multitask on the way.
Wait a minute, Ken.
We do multitask, Ken. Not the driver, but I can. Going back from our last system and navigation, we have less downtime with Logis currently. We can use our video, we can do video telemedicine right in the patient's home with the same Logis phone that we're navigating off of. We also have our operative IQ that we can track our narcotics issuing and the usage of it. It's cut down on our radio traffic dramatically, which for us is less stressful.
Especially depending on who's dispatching.
Yes, definitely, depending on who's dispatching, not Raylan. We have our BL that now all of our field providers have, which for me has improved my intubations dramatically. We're able to also record those intubations, go back, and they're used for our QA/QI and education for later on.
We have video evidence.
We have video evidence. They can see our scenes.
Yeah, so think of the video technology. So we get video of how you're driving to the scene.
Mm-hmm.
We have video for telemedicine that you may be doing, video for the advanced area management. So Big Brother's watching all the time.
We are, yeah. I think it helps a lot in our education, though. I feel like it does.
Raylan, how about you?
Well, one thing that we've always been titled as system status controllers, that was our main function and job. But now with Logis CAD, we're more system status monitor. We monitor the system. Logis does all the call assignments, the reassignments, the post moves. So our job is mainly just to watch the technology and make sure it's functioning properly. We also have CAD to CAD interface with most of our client cities. So before we had to make phone calls to update them on every single thing that changed within the call. Now they can see all the CAD notes that we see from the call takers directly from their CAD as well.
Okay. And you mentioned in our prep for this something about text 911. What's that all about? Yes.
We recently started text 911 so people can actually text us instead of actually calling 911. So it's changed the way that we take calls now, because before we talk to every caller, we can hear the emotion, we can hear everything that's happening, and now all that's gone, we can just text them back and forth with the information that we're needing.
There's a function in our new CAD where you can send a text message to a caller and use that for geolocating.
That is correct.
Talk to us about that.
If a caller's not able to give us their location, and we can't get that from MedStar or 911 map, we can actually send them a text message, and they will click on the link, and the link will send the GPS directly to our CAD station to show us where the patient is located.
Does it have emojis?
No emojis. No.
We do have emojis to be able to text the dispatcher in the field.
Logis has emojis.
Yeah.
All right, and Ken, how about on your end? As as the CEO and now CEO?
You know, the technology is amazing. I have to mention this morning, my alarm went off, which is, you know, on my mobile device now, and it said, time to wake up. Matt Savetsky's birthday this morning. So we just wanted to wish you a happy birthday and tell you how much we appreciate all you do for us. But, no, we, you know, the data analytics that comes through with all the technologies we have today is, in some cases, it can actually be overwhelming. You know, working through the data, we can cut and slice it as many different ways as you could possibly think of. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but, you know, we have the ability to merge data from multiple systems through products like BI Power and Tableau and that kind of stuff. So we can pull information from the image trend, our EPCR reporting platform from Lotus, all that kind of stuff, to be able to track better and in more real time even. You know, one of the things we're doing here, we do speed loading. I know a lot of system status markets do that with the ambulances. We're trialing some different RFID pilot projects to track everything from hard assets, like the bigger things, all the way down to we've even been giving it a try, tagging individual items. So then at the beginning of paramedic and EMT shift, they can get on with a scanner like they have at Walmart or whatever, and it's preloaded with what should be on that truck, and it'll tell you, yep, everything's here, no, it's not. The same way at the end of shift, it'll create a pick list for you, in theory.
So will it tell you if you left your stretcher on the scene of the call or the hospital?
They actually have in the ambulances that red light will come on if you have left equipment behind. They won't tell you if you've left your student behind.
Oh, no!
So, well, not that anybody in this room's done that recently.
No, no one would ever do that.
We could, you know, put a QR code on the student or chip them. That's it.
That's exactly what we're suggesting.
I actually suggested a tracking device.
So somebody in this room left a student behind?
Possibly.
We would not say that.
That seems to be turning redder.
And that student called 911.
And the amazing thing is that student still showed up for their job interview today.
She did. She's been an
She
amazing
thinks that maybe if she
student.
sits in the front seat, she won't get left behind.
Exactly.
She's Elizabeth was off today, so what could happen?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you know, one of the other nice features that we've been able to look at is actual CAD tracking and playback. With having all the ambulances, GPS tracks. If somebody forgets to hit their on-scene button or something, the geofencing will put them on scene after a certain amount of time. But if we want to get more specific than that, we can go drill down and then timestamps when you can see the ambulance get on scene, you can see the timestamp. Also, with the Lotus phones, we can see what time they have patient contact, and they actually have the ability to timestamp when they get to the patient's side. So it helps us be more patient-centric there.
Just one thing to drill down a little bit further, just briefly. We see it there on the screen, but you all have mentioned the Lotus phone.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a pretty big change in the system. Typically, they had mobile data terminals. They're installed in the ambulance or a tablet. How has the use of that sort of smaller technology made your jobs easier, on both sides of the microphone? So Elizabeth, you know, are there certain things you can do with the Lotus phone or with that you couldn't do with the mounted vehicle MDT and stuff?
Yeah, we can take it with us. We can take it with us on scene. It's in our pocket. So if we have to run in somewhere to, you know, make a pit stop, it's always with us. So we know where, you know, if the call comes out, we don't have to keep our radios on and, you know, constantly listening for radio traffic. We hear the ring. So it definitely has improved a lot of the aspects of the job.
And from a communications perspective, Braylon, the way that you dispatch and even communicate with field units is much different now. You mentioned earlier, both of you did, not so much radio traffic. So how do you do some of that communication, Braylon, from the comm center in the field?
Well, pretty much all the information that we get through EMD is sent directly to the crew's phone. And if they don't want to have radio contact with us back and forth, they can send us direct messages, and we can send them messages as well. So something that may not want to be said over the radio, they may feel more comfortable sending it via text.
Like Ken's in a bad mood today and that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the good thing about all that text messaging is it's trackable, right? So it's recorded digitally, and we go look at it. So can see if people are talking about it. Cool.
That way I don't have a bad days.
Right. All right, here's some images of things that, you know, are part of that. And Elizabeth, we didn't talk really much about the video telemedicine component, but tell us real quickly about the video telemedicine that we started in October.
It's been great. I've had some success with it with my patients, extremely happy. The first time I used it, I had a gentleman that really did not want to go to the emergency room. He just wanted us to check him out. He, you know, just wanted us to look at him, make sure he was okay. He wasn't sure what was going on. He had been riding a bicycle after 20 years for the first time, and he had strained a glute muscle.
A butt.
He had strained a butt muscles, yes. And he didn't want to go to the ER. He just wanted us to look at it and get some advice on what he could do to fix it. And he was pretty uncomfortable. So I offered him our telemedicine. He was excited about this. We were in the back of the ambulance. We got the doctor on the phone. He had a great outcome. They got him a couple of prescriptions for, you know, steroids, muscle relaxer, and he was able to pick those up at the pharmacy, and he stayed out of the ER. He didn't want to go. So.
Did you ride the bike to the pharmacy?
I advised him he probably should not have any exercise in the next couple of days and let that muscle rest.
And that video technology is on the same device that our CAD is on.
Yes. So we did it right on the Logis phone. Great picture. I mean, we had no trouble hearing, you know, a lot of times with video chat, it can cut in and out and service and things like that. It worked fantastic. I haven't had any problems with it.
Well, let's go on to the next question. Is there a downside to this new technology and the dependence on it? Raylan, we'll start with you this time.
Yes, you realize how much you depend on technology. Because when it goes down, you're kind of lost. You realize how much you rely on that technology.
So can you give us some examples about how you avoid that?
Training.
Okay.
I mean, you have to make sure people are prepared when technology does fail. There's a backup. Everyone knows what their role is. When the CAD goes down or if the phone system goes down, what's the backup? How do you overcome those obstacles?
I remember back in the day, pre-Logis as an example, CAD down was a thing, right? I mean, how did we prepare for both Elizabeth and for Raylan, both sides of the microphone, when there would be a planned upgrade for the CAD? What was that like under the old system?
It was pretty stressful in the comm center. All the lights came on, all the managers were downstairs. Everyone had to know what their exact role was. We had dispatchers, we had call takers, we had people that would have to run the tickets from the call takers to the dispatchers. So it was a pretty large event when that did happen.
Planned or unplanned, right? Hopefully planned.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully planned.
And Elizabeth, how about the field? How did that impact you guys in the field?
We had a pen and paper ready to go, ready to write down our addresses, our call information, finding our backup paperwork, and then relying on paper maps. We would go back to using a MapsCo, our grid system. They'd give us letters and numbers that we could identify, you know, what area of the city we're headed to. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. You forget that reliance.
Yeah, we still now, I mean, we have to have our streets memorized in case of an event and that, and training is important, making sure that all of our new hires can go back to, you know, heading toward the cross section. So.
Right. And Raylan, how is it, so CAD down today under our new CAD system, what is it like when they do an upgrade? Or what is it like when they're doing some maintenance on the CAD system?
We usually only realize it happened. We have to call to find out that it's over, because it doesn't really affect the system at all.
Cool. Elizabeth, in the field, you know, you mentioned video laryngoscopy. So you said you're able to intubate better.
Mm-hmm.
What if are you concerned that if you get so reliant on the technology, they won't be able to do manual intubation?
It's a concern, and I think we need to keep up our training. Batteries die. We have found that out. I mean, the batteries can go dead. We forget to plug them in. Human error does occur. So it's something we still need to practice. We're still going to need to do our training on, you know, the normal laryngoscope but I mean, it can happen. I mean, I still prepare for it. I still keep all my backups in place and make sure my training is still all up to date.
Muscle memory still.
Muscle memory. It is a different thing that we have to be conscious of constantly, just in case.
So Ken, as the COO and now CEO, what does that all mean to you, that reliance on technology? What keeps you up at night when it relates to that reliance on technology?
Really, it's just making sure that the backup systems are in place so the technology continues to work. With Lotus, we have a primary CAD and we have a backup version of CAD also, so one can fail over the other. That helps with the updates that Braylon was talking about. We can do the update on the version of CAD that's not actively being used, so we can flip to that version so it can be actively used and update the other version that way. The trick with that is making sure that the backup systems are ready to go. We might have had an incident where the generator went into the test, or actually the guys were testing the generator, and somehow or another it ended up getting flipped on, and we did not turn it off, and it ran out of fuel. And so CAD was still actually running, but we didn't have power to the comm center for a little bit there, so we got that restored and fixed. But you can really see a large difference when the technology's not there. The compliance drops, and it's just not what folks are used to.
Sure enough. All right, let's move to our next question. What are the cultural issues involved in adapting transformative new technology? So Elizabeth, MedStar has been through a whole bunch of changes since you've been here, many of them technological and cultural, but how do you recommend that people introduce these changes?
Slowly. Make sure you get your staff prepared. Maybe have someone come in and speak to them about, that currently uses the technology. It took a lot of us some time to get used to it. Is this going to work right? Computer telling us what to do. But I think after a while and using it over and over, and MedStar doing a great job of telling us, these are some things we're going to have to work out. And, fixing the bugs and here and there, which really I didn't have too many problems with. But,
well, you're a millennial.
Yeah, I'm a millennial, so yeah, the technology, I tend to get along with it pretty well, so I'm okay with change, but not all of us are. So some of the people that aren't, they need a little more advancement, so they need a little more information. They want to know the what's, when's, why's, the benefits.
Yeah, and the why may be being a really big part that we often forget about. Telling people.
Exactly, yeah.
So why is it important? Braylon, how about you?
I think in our department, it was trust. We got so used to doing every single thing, all the post moves, all the column assignments, that actually stepping back and allow the technology to work, to allow the system to do what it's designed to do. And then trust, but you also have to verify. At some point, people get complacent because they rely on technology so much. They just assume that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But you also have to verify that it's actually performing as it should.
And do you find that the technology has to learn just like people have to learn?
It does, yes. Because every system is different. I mean, every crew is different. Every hospital drop time is different. Every post move is different. So the system has to adapt to those variabilities as well. Yeah,
so we often talk about either artificial intelligence or machine learning. And have you found that in some of our systems, specifically for you guys in the CAD? Does the CAD get smarter as it goes?
Yes. In the beginning, we had some trust issues.
The baby wasn't so good. It wasn't so good. The baby was fine.
Yeah. It had to learn the traffic pattern for our city, the drop time for the hospitals, post moves that were a little bit better than what it did previously. But yeah, have to learn all those things.
One of the things that was interesting, and one of the things that humans do all the time, that we did a long time in the communication center, is for a car crash, if we got multiple calls for a car crash, which happens almost all the time, the call takers could append or add that additional information to. But Logis was so advanced, it just kept assigning new trucks to the new calls coming in. And we'd have crews telling us, so is there a reason why there are 3 other ambulances pulling up to my scene? Because it just automatically dispatch additional ambulances. And and learning those nuances.
Or, yeah, we're getting our own calls on incidents for CAD to CAD tickets from Fort Worth and fire, so it would assign trucks to each, the tickets that we're creating and the CAD to CAD tickets. So they have to learn
Not to do that.
not to do it.
Exactly, don't do that unless we tell them.
Right.
So, Ken, how about from your perspective?
I think that the biggest thing is to be honest with people, and, like Elizabeth said, communicate, explain the why to folks. Sometimes things just, although it's nice to get slow, sometimes with CAD changes, there's not a slow way to change a CAD, for example. But, you want to make sure that everybody, that part of your communication message is you're not trying to replace the people, that there still has to be a carbon interface there. So, things like directions and stuff like that, our GPS technology, probably worldwide, is not good enough yet to tell all the time what direction you're facing when you're sitting still, for example. So we have had folks that they get their turn-by-turn directions that Elizabeth was talking about, and they start heading off in the wrong direction because the GPS thinks they're facing some other way. So we, through part of our training, we try to teach people when they're hired on to zoom out, take a look at where it's sending you, make sure it's going the right direction, somewhere that you agree with. You have to trust your people that, sometimes they may make a wrong decision, but as long as they don't make a wrong decision every time they get a call, you kind of have to trust in that. So, but, I think the other part of it is like they talked about, when you roll out new technology, don't create artificial expectations, because I'm sure in your, 257 years in EMS, we have, you've rolled out plenty of different technology, and none of it works out of the box 100% like it's expected. They'll have little bugs that you work through, just like humans do. And I think setting that expectation early on with telemedicine is the same way. That's kind of how we roll that out as a pilot project. We want your feedback, what works well and what doesn't. We'll work on what doesn't. And I think that helps with that. That sets the culture that you want to have.
Yeah, and let's talk about that from a leadership perspective. We've implemented a bunch of changes, and what is your advice to people from the executive leadership, from the management perspective, how to introduce and really transform into that new technology?
I think, again, it's really explaining the why. It's showing what the problem is, and sort of defining what success looks like, giving people a rough picture of what you think it'll look like from where you are currently to where you're going to be, what it'll help, and then also, kind of communicating the message that we're all in this together. And so, you want to communicate, you want to explain things professionally to people, you want them to understand why you're doing what you're doing. You want feedback from them, but you want professional feedback from them. You don't want Facebook feedback from them. So, and Facebook's a great way to have a great conduit, but people can be a little harsh. And like I said, setting the expectations on the front end that this is something everybody's in together, you're working through together. I found that really helps well. And again, providing constant updates as far as when you set your goals, as far as what you're hoping to achieve by the changes that you're implementing and how that's progressing. And when it doesn't work, you have to have it. Sometimes it doesn't work. And most of the time it's smaller things, but we've made changes here that haven't worked, and we've had to change back to other things. So when I was working in Georgia, I got this great idea because everybody's so upset when I took them off 24-hour shifts that we put them on shorter shifts, and I said, well, we'll put them back on 24s because everybody's so mad at me, and I almost got murdered. I had to know that was probably not the best decision, and we went back and fixed it. So.
Yeah, and really communication works a lot. One of the things that we've done, I think, really well here is when we do major changes, when we implemented image trend, when we implemented Logis, when we implemented, in a lot of cases, Operative IQ, or make changes when we did the video telemedicine, we create specific email addresses that people can send thoughts, ideas, comments, suggestions, complaints. And even when we did the image trend changeover 5 years ago, we're still using it. And crews will come up with an idea, just came through yesterday, when the crew sends in, hey, the stroke checklist should probably have this additional thing added in. And those distribution lists, which what those email addresses are, go to all the people that are part of that process. In many cases, it might be agency-wide. So that's part of the communication process. Elizabeth, Raylan, how about you guys? When change is being suggested to you, how do you prefer it be suggested from a technology perspective?
I feel like taking, some of us need baby steps. So starting out slow, getting us prepared, emails, lots of information. I personally like Facebook, all the areas of communication. But step by step, this is what the next step is going to look like. And then, this timeline from now, this is what we're going to do. And I think it just gets us prepared so we know what's going on.
Raylan, how about on your end?
I agree with her, Elizabeth, slowly, but also the why, of course, why we're making this change and what effect it's going to have on my day-to-day operation as a system status controller or monitor, my day-to-day functions, and also the training that's going to be needed with that new technology. We don't fear the change, we fear not knowing how to handle the change or what to do when stuff happens. So training is a big part of implementing new technology.
Yeah, everybody talked about communication and we sort of poo-pooed it a little tongue-in-cheek. We've made pretty extensive use of town hall, Facebook Live meetings with great success. I mean, that's the technology. We have an internal Facebook page that is only accessible by current team members. And Ken just did a recent town hall meeting. We did them all through the coronavirus to give people updates. And that kind of technology really does help because people not only can log in with their slippers on or from a post location or from wherever, but they can be pretty open with some of their questions that they send electronically as opposed to having to speak with the question. So, yeah, pretty fascinating. All right, next question. How has this technology allowed us to be more, or you guys to be more patient-centric? So Elizabeth, you're a paramedic in the field. Have these changes allowed you to be more patient-centered?
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of our dispatching stuff now is simplified. It's one less thing that we have to worry about. I don't have to worry about listening to the radio or people getting a hold of me. I can focus on my patient, as well as our telemedicine. I mean, I think telemedicine is going to, especially with the current pandemic, it's going to just keep being used. It's going to be advanced. And I think it's beneficial to our patients, them not being able to be stuck in the ER for hours and hours with, other sick people when they don't need to be. And they can just speak to a physician right on our device.
One of our big technologies here has been operated by Q and the logistics department, using that for a lot of the staffing the trucks and the speed loaders. From your perspective, how reliable is it when you get into a truck at the start of your shift? Is it stocked the way it should be? Do you ever find, as a percentage of reliability, are you comfortable with how it's been restocked?
Well, never. I mean, I'm pretty particular though. I'm pretty particular about where I like things in case of emergency, and everything is uniform and it needs to be uniform. But I think our newest technology that they're using in logistics to actually be able to tell you what's in each one of our compartments, so that way it takes that human error out of it, and human error is going to happen. But in our job, those things can affect our patients' outcomes. So it's very important for us to have everything that we need in its place.
Okay. Raylan, come-centered, technology, patient-centric, people-centered.
One thing, the biggest thing is we use enhanced 911. So if the caller can't give us the address, we can see on the map where they're calling from to get that address. So it allows us to get the ambulance there quickly and quickly get to what we use is in the emergency medical dispatch. That's completely patient-driven. Based on the complaint, we can provide specific instructions to help them while the truck is en route or first responders are en route.
So our current CAD has a unique capability that most CADs don't. And it was one of the decision points for why we chose Lotus, because we have a lot of very special programs that are specific to a patient.
Right.
So in our call taking process, what's unique about our call taking process and assigning resources that might not be the same for other systems?
Well, we can make sure that the patient is getting the right resources based on just obtaining their name. It can tell us if they're a hospice patient, if they're part of a home health agency. So to make sure they get the right resource, not just an ambulance, it may be just a mobile healthcare paramedic or something like that, versus just sending every patient. and ambulance.
Yeah, so if you get the patient's name, which we do on 911 calls now, which again is different than most PSAPs, that patient's name is dipped through our database in Logis. It says, hey, Ken is in our high utilizer program because he's a substance abuser or a kidder. So it automatically assigns a community paramedic to that response, who's going to maybe navigate him back to AA as opposed to going to the emergency room.
And then let the call taker will give us notification as well of that patient's defined, so they can make sure that the right mobile healthcare paramedic is notified of what group that client is a part of.
It's a great example of patient-centered technology.
And also, EMD allows us, as soon as we get the address, if they give us specific complaints, we can automatically send a truck and quickly get to instructions. So if it's a patient that we know is not conscious and not breathing, it automatically sends us to our instructions.
Ken, how about from the administration executive perspective, more patient-centered?
You know, it really gives you the ability to take a closer look at what the care that the patient's getting from the patient's perspective. And one of the things that is neat about the way MedStar calculates our response times is as close as we can get to when we have contact with that patient. They have to go through a primary PSAP, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but as soon as we get the call, our response time clock starts running. So we have a better idea how long it takes, what the patient's having to go through, you know, that kind of stuff with our data metrics. And then, you know, likewise, like I was mentioning earlier, with regard to, you know, being able to pull data from all the different CAD systems and the billing systems and our EPCR platform, we really dive down into more of the data and take a look and make sure that we do have the right responses going to the right calls and things like that. And we've been having some discussions about BLS, running BLS ambulances lately. And, you know, and that's what we use that data for. We pull a lot of that out of image trend and a lot of out of CAD data, put it together and look for those EMD codes where we really didn't have less than 1% ALS critical ALS interventions and a small percentage of ALS interventions, knowing that sometimes people just get an EKG because I'm a paramedic and I can do an EKG. So
Need to practice putting an IV in.
That's right.
In.
Well, you know, the nurse yell at you when you get to the hospital, right?
Well, it happens.
It happened way back in the day, too.
They use wooden IV catheters, right?
That's right.
Bamboo. So we talked about the patient, but how about the team members? So Ken, from your perspective, how has the technology helped us be more team members then?
You know, there's some really cool things that different folks are working on to help measure team member stress. You know, First Watch has a resilient first system, and they look at a variety of factors that have the potential to impact a paramedic or EMT dispatcher's psychological well-being. And it kind of gives you something to flag. You mentioned Braylon's part of our hope squad here. You know, that squad, they are all, we do have some managers and things like that. But generally, it's a peer support group that will reach out, you know, on bad calls and things like that. Or if a partner may identify, hey, my partner seems to be having a hard time. You know, so mental health is a big thing that we're paying a lot of attention to. ESO is another group. We heard a lot of conversation from them about, you know, they have a scheduling platform and they're looking at a variety of those factors like the hour report, the type of calls that are being run to try to help identify trends that indicate when people, you know, may be more susceptible to having some mental health issues. And so we can flag those folks and get them some downtime or whatever else help, whatever other type of help they may need. Also helps to, you know, Logis helps balance workload for us. Again, automatically, if most large cities are like this, they have an interstate that runs around the city that is affectionately called the loop. And inside the loop, you run like crazy. Outside the loop tends to be a little bit later. So most of the cities I've lived and worked in have been like that. It's no different here in Fort Worth. And so if you've been in the loop running all day, and Logis has the ability to pull you out and send you to another post, to try to give you a break, they'll do that. It is, it is dependent on the call line for the day and the number of trucks that you have in the system, because if you got 10 calls and you have 10 trucks, everybody's getting a call, but if there's that capacity to give somebody a break, they do try to load balance, which helps give the crews a little bit of a break also. So.
Cool, good response. Raylan, you mentioned text 911, but what about if we could do video from the scene of a call into the comm center? How would that change your work?
That would be huge for us. Not that we ever question the integrity of our callers. Another way to go.
Oh, yeah, no. Completely
Another way
true.
for us to verify what they're saying is actually what's happening, and we can relay that information to the first responders while they're en route. It also allows us to give better instructions, because if someone's sitting on the toilet, we can give them instructions on how to move that, be able to see how to move that patient to the position we need them in to give them the instructions.
Elizabeth, how do you think that would change your world?
Well, keeps us safe. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is we're always trying to make sure that our crews are safe. I don't want to go into an unsafe scene. I don't want to keep my partner to get injured or me to get injured. So if they can see what's going on in the background, they can tell us not to go in. It's not safe yet. You know, a lot of times they can't hear anything in the background. They don't know.
Sure. And Ken, how about from your perspective, this video to 911 thing?
I think with telemedicine and all that, there's a lot of interesting technology that's coming out, and the future is very, very exciting. I know they're doing some studies on using artificial intelligence or machine learning to help better identify cardiac arrest patients. Because we've all been on those calls that come out of seizures or unresponsives, and we get there and they end up being full arrest calls. Some of these studies have tried to help identify that. And if you stop and think about it, like I'm wearing an iWatch right now, one day it could be a possibility that when you call 911, you could get a initial set of vitals off of the iWatch and a baseline EKG. Of course, not for diagnostic purposes. It's the fine print on your Apple Watch screen. But you can get that video message and initial set of vitals and really help to better triage, your calls to make determinations on what needs to go lights and sirens, what can go ALS, what can go BLS, and what can do telemedicine. Maybe we don't even send a response and we just in the comm center link up with the telemedicine provider or the care they need.
Yeah, so once we have the video feed, we can share the video feed. And when you talk about the ET3 model, and a lot of folks on the webinar are ET3 model participants, imagine now under the NOFO that CMS is going to do, that we just do telemedicine right from the comm center. And since it's a covered benefit today, it might be very synergistic. So good, thanks for sharing that. So Ken, back to you on the, how has technology improved our performance indicators?
Like you said at the beginning, pretty much everything we do is tracked in some way or another. You look at it, we have drive cam in our ambulance. Samsara is another organization that uses some machine learning for driver performance. Our monitors, they record everything that's done. It is for those of field providers. There is more than just the code summary. So back in the day, I don't think that was the case. If it is, the statute of limitations has passed. So,
Thank goodness.
but you can really paint a really comprehensive picture of what's going on from the initial time that the call hits the call center until the ambulance gets en route, how the ambulance was doing driving, getting to the scene, the care that was provided on scene, the response to the treatment that was given, the amount of time it took for you to treat the patient, to get the patient to the hospital, and then the outcomes. And we're even having, as some conversations with a lot of the hospitals about bidirectional data exchanges. So we can see when we're treating patients and the treatments we give, what really makes a difference in their outcomes. And, in some of the patients, if it's better to withhold some of the treatment and in favor of getting them to the hospital to, a specialist. So it really helps paint those pictures a lot better. We get a lot better pictures on, response time, unit hour utilization, things like that. The GPS tracking of ambulances, it's a lot harder to hide from GPS these days than back in the day. So It really helps. It just helps with productivity and being able to track and figure out what works and what doesn't.
You know, the other thing that's been a little bit helpful is that many of the technologies that we use have open APIs. Yeah. So we're doing a project now with not only our EPCR vendor, but an intermediary, perhaps from a different organization, to explain that open architecture now that is allowing competing, in some cases, technologies to merge together.
Yeah, so you have open APIs and closed APIs, and 10 years ago, I didn't really know what an API was. But, you know, it's gotten to be that important now. And basically what it does is it allows systems to join, and like we're talking about the bidirectional data interface, it allows for mapping within the system from the hospital's, you know, Epic, Cerner, whatever their EHR is, into our system. Even if that's through an intermediary, like you were saying, ESO has one, ImageTrend has, you know, their own thing, their own thing. We've used HASA before as well, and so, but that's a big part of having good data analytics to be able to track what you're, you know, what you want to know, because otherwise you just get sound bites basically, and it's really hard to aggregate that together into you know, different from different databases into one report.
Okay. Raylan, how about the comm center?
One of the big things that we track are how quickly the call taker will recognize an MRS, a person not awake and not breathing. So we can track from when they picked up the phone to when they first recognized it was a workable arrest, and how quickly they got hands on chest. We know that's important for the ultimate survivability of the patient. How quickly we get CPR, bystander CPR provided.
Yeah, and that's actually RQI is doing a big project, and we're part of that new project where they're measuring the effectiveness of call takers to recognize patients who may be in, well, not the patient, but the call telling the system because they're probably not calling, that the patient's in cardiac arrest, identifying it quickly, getting CPR started right away, as one of now the sixth link in the chain of survival. So really important. Elizabeth, let's go to you, and here's your picture of you on the Today Show, talking about the coronavirus pandemic. How has technology improved your ability to manage patients under the pandemic?
Well, so with our Logis phones, you know, we have an easy layout that we're able to see all of our call information. So there it is. So we can actually see all of the questions that are being asked by the dispatchers and their responses. So it helps us be a lot more prepared for what we're fixing to respond to.
Which gives you safe, low power on the front lawn. Who's going in? Not me.
It'll be me.
Well, what size PPE do we have? We're good. We're the smallest person in, and you know, there you go. So, Raylan, how about on your end?
With using EMD, we can track patients' complaints, their symptoms. The more symptoms they have, the more likely it is for them to have COVID-19. And so we can relay that information directly to the first responders. And we also have the ability to flag COVID addresses that are known, people that have COVID. We can flag those addresses to get that information over to the first responders, so they're prepared as well once they get there.
Yeah, good. Ken, how about on your end?
You know, like we've mentioned, we use Operative IQ for our supply tracking and that sort of stuff. So we've really been able to track and see what our PPE supplies look like, and be able to plan to have the PPE resupplied and look at a variety of vendors to try to find ones that are able to provide what we need. So it's been helpful from that perspective. And, you know, and also as we've gone through this and done additional screening on the EMD side with these pandemic patients, you know, we had conversations with our board and with our first responders early on that, you know, our response times would be spread out a little bit longer, and everybody agreed in the interest of, you know, crew and first responder safety that it was worth doing. But we're able to quantify about how much longer it takes to get through the screening questions, and you know, and so we're still held to a standard, a response time standard. It's just we basically add that additional screening time on our response time and provide that example when we're reporting our response times.
Good. Yeah, technology has helped a lot. So let's look into the future. What is the next big challenge that you hope technology can help solve? And Raylan, let's go with you first.
I think the video 911 is going to help us a lot. That way we know that we're getting the correct information to the crews and providing the right instructions as well. And also telemedicine, I mean, always making sure the patient's getting the right resources would be huge for the comm center. Everyone doesn't need name runs. So being able to provide a different resource would be good.
Elizabeth, how about you?
I do agree with Raylan on the telemedicine. I think that it's going to advance, and I think it's going to be really involved in our community paramedicine program as well. I think that's, but how about we have some ambulances that maybe can drive themselves?
You didn't say that with a lot of conviction.
No, I mean, you never know. Avoid some traffic, you know, no more dodging traffic, some street lights that respond to us.
Drivers that respond to you.
Drivers that
Everybody's on.
move properly to the right. Yeah.
Okay, that would make it safer. And, you know, in our prep, we talked about, you know, imagine the day when the ambulance is driving autonomously, all the other vehicles are driving autonomously, and when you put the ambulance in quote-unquote emergency mode, red lights and siren don't go on, but it signals all the other vehicles just to move out of the way, the traffic lights change, there are no more hot responses.
A direct response right to the hospital.
Yeah. Ken, how about from your perspective?
You know, the ability to some of the studies that we've kind of talked about a little bit with regard to evaluating better evaluating what the callers need. You know, the interesting thing about EMS is really good with logistics. It's essentially logistics management, and we are a central triage point. You know, the big complaint you hear from field providers, if you've ever been in this field for any amount of time, is that, you know, we don't need to run on all these calls. We run lights and sirens to this nonsense, and they don't even need an ambulance at all. You know, the ability to actually, through the EMV process, through the technology that can be introduced through that, to make determinations on who needs an ambulance, who needs a provider, and go from there, rather than having to send an ambulance out to see everybody.
Yeah, just mitigating it right at the comm center. We can get a 2-lead EKG off your iWatch, right, and see if you know if it's concerned or not. Yeah, great. All right. Well, we thank you guys for your time. We do have some time left over. Great time management. To see if Megan wants to funnel a couple of questions that may have come in, so that these folks might be able to answer.
I do see one question that came in that says, do you have any issues mixing non-emergent transfers with emergent 911 calls?
Really?
No, we do not. Logis plans the transfers differently than they plan the 911 calls. So the 911 calls are dispatched immediately. The transfer is dispatched based on the system level and the agreement we have with the hospitals. So we can schedule those out, or we can have them planned for within the hour, and Logis will decipher between the two.
Elizabeth, how about from a field provider staff? So our system is a little bit perhaps unique, where you may bring a cardiac arrest into the hospital, and there's a patient on the 5th floor of that hospital. And how does that work for you guys? Do you find that that happens regularly? How does your mindset change? Is that reasonable?
I don't find that it happens regularly. The things that I do see are when we're going for a transfer, and because Logis schedules them, sometimes we'll be 15 or 20 minutes away, but we're the truck that's available to go on that transfer. So then it'll give us that drive time, and it has a plan to do those things. But as for leaving the hospital with a critical patient, I think that's luck of the draw sometimes.
And we'll notice in the dispatch center that Logis will plan the transfers. I mean, it bounces throughout all the trucks until it finds the right resources.
Exactly.
To plan on based on system level and agreement with the hospital.
I've kind of just learned I'm 20 minutes away from this transfer. I'm going to make perfect timing for this. They set it up for this time, and I'm the truck that's the perfect time away from it. And so as long as you have that mindset and that thinking, going into dealing with the technology really hasn't been an issue.
Great.
And any perspective? Go ahead, Megan, I'm sorry.
Nope, no worries. Another question we got in is, in the last few years, how often have you had CAD downtime, and what was the longest period of time it was down?
Gil, did you send that question in?
No.
Really?
Well, we had CAD downtime, but I don't think it was because of the CAD. It was external
Gas generator.
external factors causing our CAD to be down. But
I was just gonna say, that's one of the things that Lotus said early on, well, initially when we first got it, was it doesn't go down. It really doesn't typically go down. Because it doesn't go down, you can't really retrospectively put calls in either, which is a little bit of a trick. But again, if you check your backups, all that kind of stuff, you're fine. I have personally worked with a lot of large CAD organizations throughout the nation in my career, and I have to say, like, many of them are extremely frustrating to deal with. One of our large cities has a large CAD provider, and a lot of times they'll ask us to have Lotus make changes on our side rather than having to go through the headache of trying to get a response on the side of their CAD vendor. So it really doesn't go down.
on Thanksgiving, we actually had a CAD down. So we prepared for a CAD to actually go down, and we never even realized the upgrade. So, I mean, it was done and over without us having to do much.
Yeah, in fact, one of the dispatchers told me not too long ago that oftentimes they know that there's an upgrade coming, but they don't know when it happened, because it doesn't happen until they open something and say, oh, that's new, that's pretty cool. It's just like, it just happened. Whereas, again, under previous administrations, CAD programs, you had to plan like it was an MCI, right? So you had all these manual tickets, and the radio traffic gets even worse. And then crews would say, can you repeat the address again? And the dispatcher says, I've told you for 3 times, have a pen ready.
It would take 20 minutes down, and we're down for 20 days.
And always at the worst time of day, right? So the time that was convenient for them.
Right.
Not a time that was best for us, which is typically like 3 o'clock in the morning when there's less calls. So, Megan, any other questions?
Yep. One other question is, can you speak some more about how your systems integrate with hospital systems like Epic, Cerner, Allscripts? Along the same lines, can you also speak to the differences in how you handle call intake on hospital discharges versus transfers?
I'm going to take the second part of it.
What was it?
The differences in how you handle hospital discharges versus
also 911 call.
Well, if you want to break it in two, the first question is if you could speak a little bit more about how your systems integrate with hospital systems like Epic or Cerner.
So what I'll say is Lotus has an open API currently, which allows us to integrate into Epic and Cerner. We are actively working with hospitals to try to get them to allow us to integrate into their systems. If you dealt with hospitals much, they tend to be pretty, hold that stuff pretty close to the chest. But one of the things that sort of the vision we have here is the ability for a nurse to go in and dispo a patient, discharge that patient out of Epic or whatever, and a PCF get printed if necessary, and they can schedule the ambulance transport right there in the Epic system. And it will actually go through, and if they pick a time that there's no ambulance available, it would give them alternative times. So, there's that possibility also, and taking it a step further, there's even a possibility to help hospitals with throughput by being able to integrate Lotus into the bed management system, so that when your crew gets transporting with that patient, it marks the room dirty, so that then housekeeping will know to come and clean that room, rather than allowing the nurse to sit with a dirty room for a couple hours thinking that, and the bed management folks thinking that there's still a patient in there, and he is just enjoying a couple hours of downtime. So,
how about on the EPCR outcome side? Part of the reasons why we're having this discussions with ESO is to try and get the E outcomes. How does that work? What's been our conversations with HOSTA and that kind of stuff?
Yes, so we do have a bidirectional interface with one of the large hospitals here, and it is through an intermediary called HOSTA. And it's basically we get outcomes back from the hospitals as far as how our patients went. They match typically by name and birthday. Some of them match by customer service number and MSN, CSN, all of what the patient gets when they get checked in. So it allows us to electronically push all that data to them, and it's found in the PCR, as well as if they want a PDF copy of the PCR that can be put in the chart somewhere electronically. And it allows us to get back the information as far as what the diagnosis was in the ER, whether the patient was admitted to the hospital, and then when the patient's finally discharged, what their discharge diagnosis is. Again, all that data is data that the hospitals have the option to give you or not give you in these interfaces. And it's been a little bit of a trick working with some of the EPCR vendors to be able to really identify when we get new information in, because all of it sounds great, but we do 150,000 calls a year, and trying to identify when the patient that we took 3 months ago now has a social security number and they got emergency Medicaid out of that 150,000 patients that we touch is a little bit difficult. So those are things that we're still actively working on, and the technology is pretty new. So
Great. And then the follow-up question from that was also if you could speak to the differences in how you handle intake on hospital discharges versus hospital transfers.
You mean like transfer from one hospital to hospital, or?
I think yes. So the difference in hospital discharges versus interfacility transfers.
For interfacility transfers, such as like nursing homes or doctor's offices like that, we use Procreate, so we use the EMD process, and that determines the response that's given to that facility. Hospital to hospital transfers, we use our internal protocol, which is done on a completely different screen, but we still use LOGIS, and we obtain information through that protocol to determine if it's BLS, ALS, or if it's an SCT transport.
Great. I think the last question I see in here is when a nurse is scheduling a BLS transfer or discharge within Epic or similar charting software, does the system ensure medical necessity?
They would go through, the idea is that they would generally fill out a PCS form to give that information, and that would be one of the check boxes that they would go through to ensure necessity.
And the call takers who actually look over all the transfers, so we'll call them and find out if what they provided did not meet medical necessity. We can call them to find out, why the patient has been transferred by ambulance, and then document that.
And they have a buzzer in the comm center. When that happens, you go, wrong answer, try again.
That goes off all the time.
Hey, Matt, this is Gil. As we're wrapping up, and maybe I know the final questions have kind of popped through here, but thought I'd maybe hit the Christmas wish list for Raylan and Elizabeth with a little bit of a preview of what we've been working on. That kind of hits the stuff you guys are talking about in the future, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, you were discussing the whole ability to get video from a 911 call or even a call to a non-emergency line, So we're actually rolling out, based upon our experiences in Europe, our new Stream product, which allows you to send a text message to a calling party, stream video directly from the scene off their cell phone, or do nurse triage in your dispatch center, really to get additional information. That same functionality works directly within the mobile device. So on your Logis mobile, providers can stream back. That can go to dispatch. That can be sent to additional endpoints. So as you're talking about kind of what the future wish is for the ability to get information from a stream, whether it's for provider safety or for being able to help further diagnose or verify what's going on with the patient, Stream really kind of fits into that niche for helping to address that. So I think it's something to look forward to here as it's rolling out here in the next few weeks. The second piece, and probably more towards Ken's side, as we're talking about COVID and the ability to track things, and kind of been working with one of our partners on, both from an employee but also a patient population, is the ability to track vaccinations, especially with a lot of the tracking rules that are going within that. So directly within our solution, using a combination of appointments in our outpatient portal, you'll be able to track vaccinations if you need to manage COVID vaccinations within Logis. So kind of hits on a couple of the topics you talked about today, kind of throw that in as part of that.
Yeah. Looking forward to that.
That'll be on the upgrade that you had scheduled for 2 a.m. this morning, is that?
It's right. Raylan's going to see it when he comes back to his desk.
Megan, any last questions before we wrap up and thank our presenters?
I don't think so. That's all the questions that we came through. So is there anything left that you guys want to touch on before we close it out?
No, just I want to thank Elizabeth, Raylan, and Ken for sharing their expertise, and for Raylan and Elizabeth specifically, this is not something that's normally in their sphere of comfort, and the fact that they were willing to come in and do this and to share some of their ground level expertise. You'll all be happy to know that the blushingness has come out of Elizabeth's face by now. It's been an hour. She's
Talk about it, it will come back.
So thank you guys very much for that.
Well, I lost my hair, I'm losing my mustache.
Megan, you want to do some wrap up?
Yes. Well, thank you so much to MedStar, and thanks again to Gil and everyone at Logis Solutions for helping put on this webinar. Like I mentioned at the top of the call, I will be sending out a recording of today's presentation. I'll also include Gil's contact information in case you have any questions about the system or any questions for him. So I'll be sending that out in about an hour. But that is it for all of us today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys have a great holiday season. And feel free to respond to my email with any questions you might have.
Thanks, Meg.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, MedStar, guys.
Thanks.